Electoral College is set to ratify Donald Trump's presidential victory today. Electors gathering in all 50 state capitals and Washington, D.C. This vote is getting more attention than usual as Clinton supporters hold out hope for an unlikely twist.
The real drama is coming from the widely varying responses to Russia's hacking to influence the election. Trump and his team largely dismissing the issue. But you now have senators on both sides of the aisle who are saying this is a very big deal, an existential threat to your security, and they want a broader investigation. Still 32 days until the inauguration. Let's begin this hour with CNN's Jessica Schneider. She's in Lansing, Michigan. That's where the state's electors, every state meets in its own state capital or state house for this. Michigan will be an important one to watch.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. Michigan's 16 electors will cast their votes at 2 o'clock today. It will be happening in state capitals all around the country, like you said. It's something that happens every year, but this year we're expecting protests, and there have already been thousands of calls for electors to, quote, vote their conscience. An unlikely scenario, though. Donald Trump getting one step closer to officially becoming the next president of the United States today. All 538 members of the Electoral College casting their ballots across the country. The typically ceremonial process in the spotlight, since some are urging electors to go rogue and block Trump from the office. For that to happen, though, 37 Republican electors must switch their votes, a scenario seen as highly unlikely.
The question is whether there are 37 Republican electors who think that either there are open questions or pull the brake.
Some Republican electors say they've gotten thousands of letters, even death threats, after pledging to vote for Trump regardless of side pressure.
It's utter hypocrisy because I don't think
Reporters acted and threatened people like those who lost the election are doing. They would be scorned and called terrible names after praising the Electoral College over the weekend.
The electoral vote, and I never appreciated it until now, how genius it was.
Meanwhile, the president-elect's top aides continue to question Russia's interference in the U.S. election.
Or they should stand in front of a camera and make the case.
President Obama speaking out about the hacking operation in a new interview.
The issue now is not relitigating the election. The issue now is for us to learn lessons in every election cycle where you have substantial foreign influence in
Russian interference in the election.
This is serious business. If they're able to harm the electoral process, then they destroy democracy, which is based on free and fair elections.
And many Democrats pointing to the details of those Russian hacks and hoping that it could sway electors. In fact, Michigan's own Michael Moore, the documentary filmmaker and activist, even pledging to pay the fines of electors who go rogue and, quote, vote their conscience. But 28 states do have faithless elector laws, and Republican officials right here in Michigan tell me that if any of their electors go rogue, which they are not expecting, they would just simply replace those electors. Chris?
Right. Now, Jessica, a lot of those laws haven't been tested for constitutionality, but they're just another nod to that today should give you an outcome that is anything but a surprise. Our thanks to Jessica Schneider. Let's bring in former Congressman Jack Kingston of Georgia. He was a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. It's good to see you, Congressman. Best to your family for the holidays.
Well, same to you, Chris. It's great to be with you.
So with the Electoral College doing the direct vote today, do you think that will end the need for this silly spin coming out of the Trump team about the uncertainty of whether or not Russia was involved with the hacks, and that President Obama is acknowledging the hacks because of pressure from the Clinton camp? This is silly. We had on October 7th, Clapper came out. He coordinates with all the intel agencies. He said Russia is behind the hacks. Forget about why they did it for now. Shouldn't the president-elect acknowledge the threat of Putin and these hacks?
Well, Well, I don't think the pressure is on him to really have to acknowledge it either way. I think if Congress could do its job because the CIA would show up, it would mean a huge make a huge difference. As you know, Devin Nunes in the House Intel Committee tried to have a hearing with Clapper just Thursday, and he would not show up. Which I got to say, Chris, as somebody who served in Congress for 22 years, that is absolutely outrageous. The executive branch is funded by the legislative branch, and they have to have oversight, and they show up. And so if the CIA has such compelling evidence, they need to come forward without any equivocation and say, look, here's what we got. And, by the way, we are on the same page with the FBI, which in my estimation has yet to be determined. Clapper is the one saying the FBI is on the same page as he is, but Comey has not said that yet.
Jack, a couple of things. Because you know better that there's a difference between having somebody come forward with evidence of a crime, as the FBI also does, and having intelligence reveal its sources and methods. You know that there's a significant difference in the danger of exposing those two different types of information. And also, just for point of fact, Nunes may have wanted Clapper to come out and expose methods and sources. Clapper didn't want to do that, but Clapper says he tried to call Nunes 3 times, which makes Nunes look like he was trying to score some political points and pull a stunt and not actually get information from Clapper, because he could have done that on a phone. He didn't need the hearing for it.
Well, Chris, I don't know. I know Devin Nunes. I know Peter King. I believe you do. I know you've interviewed them before. These are really serious guys. To have a classified hearing is nothing to them. There's a room. I've been in it. I've had these classified briefings. It's a well-swept room. There's no bugs in it, and they can talk about anything they want inside that room. And Devin Nunes is a guy, and Peter King as well, who have a track record of keeping confidential information, classified information. They deal with it on a weekly basis. So, to me, for Clapper not to step forward is really disturbing. But remember what President Obama said on Friday. He said that there was evidence that hacking took place on DNC and on John Podesta's emails. There was no evidence that it disrupted or affected the election results. And there is this kind of perception that, oh, they broke into the voting machines in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, or anywhere else, and they swayed the outcome. And that's not true. What they did is they embarrassed the DNC, and we also know about hacking that you make it look like somebody else did it. Well, but it's highly unlikely that only Russia was doing it. There's probably hacking going on all over the place from other countries as well, and lone wolf actors.
A couple of things. One, the Clapper came out October 7th again. This is what they do. They're very confident that it was Russia. They know how to see when it's Russia. We've talked to people who are involved in the investigation. I don't think we need to muddy those waters absent any new information. Secondly, you're right. It wasn't about what they did to the election machines and the actual polling places, but part of the reason people think that goes back to the Trump campaign, because they were advancing theories about the concern of that and about Soros and his ownership of the machines. That was coming from Trump's team and the surrogates around him who were spreading that BS in the days leading up to the election. So they have to own that too. This is those chickens are coming home to roost.
Well, you know, but the irony is the Clinton team and MoveOn.org and this guy Clayton or whoever is behind this Americans United group or whatever it's called that hired the Hollywood actors to try to sway the electors and all the intimidation that's going on to the electors. They're the ones now not accepting the results of the election, and they're the ones who are putting democracy in a spin, to use their own words. But also, Chris, remember, October 7th, why wasn't the president acting at a higher level then? Where was the bipartisan Senate outrage? Where were those senators who are now calling for hearings on October 7th? Because what evidence has changed? If the evidence was out there on October 7th, surely they should have been jumping up and down.
Politicians not doing the right thing does not mean the evidence is not there, because it was certainly to the satisfaction of the intel community. Let me ask you about something else, though. You just took an important trip over to Russia. You went as a private citizen. People have to know that. You support the president-elect. You're in a senior, but you went there as a private citizen. Understood. You said while you were over there that, hey, we should look at these sanctions because... What does that mean? I mean, they were just put in 2014, and they were at targeted individuals and entities that were seen as bearing responsibility for the obvious illegal incursion by the Russian government into Ukraine. How do we know they haven't been effective? Why would you want to remove them?
Well, two things, Chris, and I'm glad you have said that, but I will reiterate that I was there as a private citizen. I worked for a law firm that has been there for 20 years, and we did post-election reviews in Brussels, London, and in Sydney, Australia, and in Washington, D.C. So this was just part of that. We would have done that if Hillary Clinton was the winner.
Understood.
No longer an advisor to the Trump campaign. That ended with the election. But what my statement was is that the sanctions have been in place long enough to know if the results that we wanted were achieved. And that's a far more tame statement than the one I got credit for. The point being is, has Putin withdrawn from Crimea? Have they straightened out their relationship with the Ukraine? And I think there's a legitimate question there for the U.S. Congress and for the new administration to ask. Were those sanctions effective? And if they weren't effective, do you double down on them, or do you withdraw them? Do you get more of an international community pressure to join the sanctions? My point was, if you look at the results, because they've been in place, are you where you wanted to be? And I think that we're hearing, for example, Lindsey Graham said he wants to bear down, double down on the sanctions. And I think, that's a legitimate discussion as well. But what I was trying to do is, you look at Russian-American relationships. They have not been great under Obama. A new administration has the opportunity to come in there and says, how can we address Crimea? How can we address the Ukraine? How can we address Syria, where there's so much human suffering going on? And utilize our existing relationships that have worked. We have American businesses that have been in Russia for 20 and 30 years, and these are Fortune 500 companies that do $50 billion worth of work in Russia a year. Can that not be used as a conduit for communication and some cooperation in a positive sense? I think most Americans will say we need to have a new and a better chapter with Russia.
Jack Kingston, thank you very much for your perspective. And again, best for Christmas to the family.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be with you.
All right, be well. Allison?
Chris, we have a horrible story to tell you about. A manhunt is underway in Little Rock, Arkansas, for a driver accused of shooting and killing a toddler during an apparent case of road rage. CNN's Miguel Marquez is here with more. Miguel, what have you learned?
Yeah, this is just a horrific and cowardly situation. Little Rock police say that the grandmother was driving, but apparently not fast enough for the person behind her. That man began honking, trying to get her to speed up, but she had two kids in the car, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, so maybe she was taking a little extra precaution. When she pulled up at a stop sign and didn't move fast enough, the man hopped out of his car, fired one shot into the car. She drove off, not realizing that the 3-year-old had been hit. Only when she pulled into a department store parking lot a short time later did she realize the little boy had been shot. She called 911, and he was pronounced dead at the hospital. This is the second child killed by gunfire in Little Rock in the last month, and the city's 40th homicide this year.
This is a little precious baby, innocent baby. We done lost 2. And it's a time when the community got to say enough is enough.
Now, Little Rock police say they are looking for a tall African-American male who was driving an older model black Chevy Impala. Police now offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of this individual. Back to you.
All right, Miguel. Appreciate the reporting. People in Corpus Christi, Texas can use tap water again this morning. State environmental officials giving the all clear on drinking, bathing, and cooking with the city's drinking water. What had happened? Well, there was a chemical leak, and it got its way into the water system. Why? They don't know yet, but they know the chemical was used in the making of asphalt and somehow got to enter the water supply. That chemical can cause burning on the skin at the least. The restrictions were in place for about 4 days. A lot of people are still skeptical about how safe the water is.
All right, listen to this crazy story. Police in Hudson, New York say their rescue of a reportedly frozen woman inside a cold car went cold. The officers smashed the vehicle's rear window when the mask-wearing woman did not answer them in 5-degree weather. Well, it turns out the woman was a life-size mannequin used for medical training they say. Police say its owner used some very colorful language to the officer who smashed his window. Okay, that looks like a real person.
Wait, why was the mannequin in the car?
Because it was going somewhere for medical training.
The mannequin was?
And yes, with the driver.
Oh, so the mannequin was in, it was in the passenger seat.
Yes.
That's a key fact, by the way.
I think it's obvious right there.
I couldn't tell what seat it was in. So the mannequin was in the passenger seat, but it had a seatbelt on it.
You can never be too safe.
Is that what you would do with a mannequin? Would you put it in this passenger seat and put a seatbelt on it?
Yes, I would. But
you wouldn't throw it in the trunk?
No, that would have roused the police's suspicion even more.
They wouldn't have seen it if it was in the trunk. Anyway, I'm sure he was upset. I'm sure they were upset, too. That's the last thing cops...
First of all, that is a very realistic-looking mannequin.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Let us know what you think.
President Obama offering some choice words to his Russian counterpart, vowing retaliation for what happened with the hacking. So, how does Moscow feel about what President Obama said? We get insight from Moscow next.